Hello and welcome to Broken Entertainment. Today I want to talk a little bit about my experience with the writing community on Twitter. I actually just left Twitter. I completely shut the account down, and I'm going to go into that a little bit. So, when I first signed up a couple of years ago, I did it because if you're trying to get traditionally published, you usually will go through agents. You can submit to, as you can see on the screen here, you can submit to publishers as well directly. But often the most common method is to submit to agents, and then the agents go through a process of submissions to publishers and try to sell your book to publishers, and then essentially setting up a middleman. But the agent takes care of a lot of the dirty work that if you self-publish or if you publish or if you directly contact a publisher, you'd have to do yourself otherwise. Um, and generally, they're pretty helpful individuals. My experience with them has mostly been that if you talk to them about writing, they have a lot of advice. They're willing to kind of walk you through things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do. Pretty basic stuff. And so when I first joined up, I was blocking anyone that was political all the time because I wasn't there for that. I was there to build a fan base. I was there to get information and to track agents and figure out who I wanted to submit to and learn more about the process, learn ways to improve my writing, and so on and so forth. And for a while, it was really helpful. I was generally able to keep politics away from it. Um, Most of the writers were talking about writing, most of the agents were talking about being agents, and the publishing process, and so on. Um, and I kept seeing these, what they call writer lifts, where you go in and it's got a bunch of names and you follow them. They're supposed to follow you back. It's supposed to build your follower base. I did those for a while. Um, then I started to realize something. Generally speaking, at least in the writing community on Twitter, followers don't mean anything, especially if you go through writer lifts. Followers rarely interact with you. You rarely get communication back from anything you say. There, a lot of the writer lift things are just to make their own numbers look better. And there are some people that will follow you, get your follow back, and then unfollow you. It's silly. Um, but the agents were still good, and so I decided I'd focus on YouTube and stay away from Twitter as far as building a fan base because it wasn't helpful. And just keep following the agents and publishing companies and so on. And then over the course of the last, I'd say, year, everything started to change so that it was just, first it was just more and more political, and then it was just all politics all the time. None of the agents I followed talked about writing anymore. None of them talked about the process of submissions. None of them talked about what you can do to make yourself better. All they talked about was orange man bad, white man bad, all the usual tropey crap. And, they'd go on and on about their ideology, and it just got to the point where I'm like, why am I here? I had felt like I had learned everything I could because everything that was left was politics. And I had to turn to other sources. YouTube, for example, um, Brandon Sanderson's got a lot of great videos that you can watch, his lectures and so on. That's very helpful. There's some self-published authors I follow on YouTube, um, and they can be a little political at times. And well, let me let me qualify that. They're not political in the sense of political parties, but you do occasionally get the I'm tired of these old white men writing fantasy novels. I'm tired of old white men this and that, that kind of SJW territory kind of crap. But generally speaking, they talk about writing, focus on writing, so I kind of overlooked that. But on Twitter, it was just all SJW, far, far, far fringe stuff all the time. And so I said, okay, why am I here? Well, I was following one writer in particular. We communicated back and forth pretty frequently. And I was like, this would be a good person to become a beta reader for, and then maybe they could become a beta reader for me. I knew where they stood. They were at SJW, but they weren't overt about it. Like, they fell into that category, but they weren't hardcore. And they almost never talked about it. So, not really an issue. And I'm like, okay, that's great, right? The writing was interesting. It was a little out there, but it was interesting. And I thought this would be a good beta reader because they are going to give me that perspective that is uh, opposite of mine, right? And they do have writing skills, so I was hoping to kind of build that up, and then through them meet other people, and so on and so forth. And then politics, the great ruiner of everything, especially in entertainment. They came in with their politics all of a sudden, not directly at me, just in general. And the big thing that got me was they posted some information about state they lived in. I won't say what state it is. Let's just say it's a left-leaning state. And it was an article about all the different counties within the state that usually vote red, whereas the major city votes blue. And that swings the whole state. There's plenty of examples of states like that. So they said, well, I won't quote directly, but they indicated that they were glad that they had the city and the state because they were surrounded by Nazis. And that's the attitude in entertainment that we can't have. You can disagree. Uh, you can put plenty of analogy into your writing. You can put plenty of subtle meaning into your writing. That's all great. People have done that forever. But when you start to say that everybody around you that disagrees with you politically is a Nazi, not only is there no room for conversation, you've just said everybody that doesn't agree with you is evil. And that's the attitude that I see on Twitter all the time. And that's where I finally said, okay, enough. It's not helpful. It has gone from helpful to stressful. It has gone from helpful to harmful. So I left. And it's been great. But it's just so unfortunate that as a segment of the population, the people who are creators, who work in entertainment, they more and more talk about how they see the other half of the country as evil. And they'll actively tell people that disagree with them on Twitter to not buy their stuff. And this isn't for you. This author did the same thing. They were like, oh, well, this is really for sexually liberal people. Put it that way. Other people won't be reading this because it'll bother them too much. Well, you don't know that. you know, I I am not what I would call that person's target audience, but I still found the writing really interesting. As a creator, you don't know who's going to read or consume what you create. And it shouldn't matter. In fact, the opposite of it should matter. It should matter. You should want to reach people who disagree with you. First of all, for the sake of sales. And second of all, because maybe your writing makes them think a little bit. That's okay. But to try to close it off from half the country, I mean, if you look at the most recent election, it's pretty close split, right? Do you want to, and this is just counting the voting electorate, do you want to say, what was it, 70 million people don't buy my product because you don't agree with me politically? And that's where we are with entertainment. That's where Hollywood is. That's where a lot of, I don't think a lot of authors are there, though certainly I've seen evidence of some, but a lot of agents, a lot of publishers, and as a writer, it makes me go, well, how do I know if I submit this to you that you're not going to find out where I am politically and say, oh no, never mind. Or you're not going to look at it and say, this is a white guy's name. Because a lot of these agents are saying that they're tired of all these old white people. Tired of white men. Tired of white men writing fantasy. Tired of white men working on medieval European fantasy. Tired of white men in sci-fi. And that makes you stop and think, like, am I going to be disregarded because of my race? That's called racism, right? It used to be. So, yeah, just kind of where I am on Twitter. I've completely left it. So, I will be putting links in my videos for social media that I am on here soon once I get everything established. But I think it's really, really sad state that entertainment's in. And we need independent creators now more than ever. And we have to, I'm not saying you have to be the opposite of an SJW. I'm just saying you have to produce material hoping that everybody consumes it. And not try to say, nope, half the country's Nazis. Or, nope, I don't want these people reading. Can you imagine saying that about a race, for example? Well, I don't want those people reading my book. Come on. We need to push more out there that is just entertainment. And like I said, analogy is great. Subtext is great. But you gotta put more out there that is entertaining, that people will want to consume, and you need to be willing to let anyone and everyone read or consume whatever it is you're making. Because right now, the people in charge, Tor.com, well, Tor, not Tor.com, Tor, the agents, some of the editors, they only want things from one perspective. And one of the great things about books and really great movies and great TV shows is they show you other things than what you are. And that's what gets people's minds open. That's what gets people thinking. Watching Star Trek the original series and seeing an episode about a species divided between black on one side, white on the other, and then black on the other side and white on the other, that are in civil war with each other, and seeing how ridiculous everyone around them views that as an analogy for, rather than a direct approach to racism in the United States, that kind of writing opens people's minds. It makes them think like, well, okay, but if you just shut it down, all you're doing is hurting entertainment. If all your entertainment that you make is lecturing people on how to live and ham-fisted, you know, politics, not only are you going to shut out a whole bunch of people, those people are going to ignore you, and they're going to ignore everything you have to say. And they're not only they're not going to pay you to consume your entertainment, you've lost any opportunity to convince them otherwise. And you can see it all over the place. The NBA got political, and now its ratings have crashed. The NFL got political, and its ratings have gone down. Hollywood is suffering big time. Netflix is suffering. Time and time again, entertainment that tries to lecture and argue about how you should live rather than use good writing and analogies and subtext, time and time again, the comic book industry, it's all failing. Our entertainment is being dragged down to the drain because people want to make a point rather than entertainment that makes you think. So, independent creators can bring that back. Like I said before, Star Trek's dead, Star Wars is dead, Doctor Who's dead. Cremate the bodies and move on. It sucks, but trying to resurrect corpses isn't half as productive as making new entertainment that maybe even surpasses those things at their height and can push aside these people that have come in and ruined everything by being nothing but political and telling you that if you don't agree with me, you're evil. So that's where I am. My next video, I'm going to talk about my my writing journey, we'll call it, and I will hopefully post that soon. And I will see you next time.